Commander Taeho Kim stared at the holographic display in his ship's cockpit, trying to focus on the landing coordinates for the mining outpost on Vega 7. The transport job was simple: deliver supplies, pick up processed ore, return to Earth. Colony. But his mind kept drifting to his daughter Gia. At 17, she was fiercely independent, insisting she could handle 3 months alone while he completed this deep space contract. The pay was too good to pass up, enough to cover her university tuition next year. His thoughts were interrupted by a sharp beep from his personal communicator. Gia's ID flashed on the screen. He smiled, tapping to accept. "Hey, sweetheart, I was just thinking about—" A scream cut through the transmission, making Taeho's blood freeze. "Dad, help! They're breaking in!" "They're—" Her voice dissolved into terrified sobbing, punctuated by strange clicking sounds that definitely weren't human. "Gia! Gia!" Taeho shouted, but the connection had already gone dead. He immediately diverted course, pushing his transport ship's engines beyond safety limits. The journey back to the colony took 16 agonizing hours. Every minute felt like torture, as he tried repeatedly to contact Gia, then the colony security forces, then anyone who might help. Nobody answered. When he finally landed at the colony port, he didn't even wait for proper docking procedures before jumping out and sprinting toward the residential sector. The security office was his first stop, where a young officer named Han looked uncomfortably at his boots as Taeho demanded answers. "I'm sorry, Commander Kim. We've had several disappearances in the past week. Your daughter isn't the only one." "Show me the security footage," Taeho demanded, his voice dangerously calm. The officer hesitated before bringing up the feed from outside Taeho's home. The timestamp showed just minutes after Gia's call. 3 tall figures moved with unnatural grace toward the front door. They were at least 7 feet tall with segmented limbs and what appeared to be armored exoskeletons. The camera angle changed to inside the house. Gia had backed herself into a corner of the living room, clutching a kitchen knife that looked pathetically small as the creatures advanced. One of them raised what looked like a small wand, and Gia collapsed instantly. They collected her unconscious body with clinical efficiency and left. "What are they?" Taeho whispered, his fists clenched so tightly that his nails cut into his palms. Officer Han sighed heavily. "They're from the Nox Dominion. We've tried contacting their embassy, but they claim no knowledge of these incidents." "And you believe them?" Taeho's voice rose with anger. "What we believe doesn't matter. The colony governor says we can't risk diplomatic incidents with the Nox. They control too many resources we need." Taeho stood very still, processing this information. The Nox had appeared in human space about 5 years ago, technologically superior and seemingly peaceful. They traded advanced tech for mining rights and cultural exchange, but always maintained a certain distance, an air of superiority. "So nobody's doing anything. My daughter is just gone?" The rage building inside him was becoming harder to contain. Han looked genuinely sympathetic. "I'm sorry, Commander. We don't have the authority or the capability to challenge the Nox." Taeho turned to leave, then paused. "Does anybody have records of where their ships go after these collections?" Han hesitated before quietly sliding a data chip across the desk. "This is everything I've gathered unofficially. Transit patterns, communication frequencies, it's not much, but—" Taeho pocketed the chip with a nod of thanks. Back at his house, he ignored the broken door and went straight to his bedroom. From under the floorboards, he pulled out a case he hadn't opened in 8 years since leaving Earth's Special Forces. His fingers trembled slightly as he entered the combination and lifted the lid. Inside lay the remnants of his previous life. Tactical gear, weapons that weren't strictly legal in civilian space, and most importantly, a set of military-grade contact chips that would connect him to the only people who might help. 3 hours later, he sat in a dingy bar at the edge of the colony, facing 2 people he hadn't seen since they'd all left the service. Jun Seo still had his characteristic buzz cut, though grey now peppered the black. Beside him, Mina looked just as lethal as she had during their missions together, her eyes constantly scanning the room. "So the peaceful Nox are taking humans for some reason," Junseo summarized after Taeho explained. "And your daughters?" "One of them." Mina's expression hardened. The question is why. What do they want with humans? I don't care why, Tejo said flatly. I just need to find her. His old teammates exchanged glances. 8 years ago, they'd been the most effective extraction team in the service. They'd gone into hostile territory on dozens of planets, always coming back with their targets. But this was different. They'd be going against an alien power with technology far beyond human capability. You know what you're asking, right? Jun Seo leaned forward. This isn't sanctioned. If we're caught, Earth will disavow us. We'll be labeled terrorists. I'm not asking you to come, Tejo said quietly. Just need access to equipment, contacts. Mina placed her hand over his. Your daughter was at my wedding, Tejo. She called me auntie. We're coming. For the first time since hearing Jia's scream, Tejo felt a spark of hope. Using the data from Officer Han, they identified a pattern in Nox ship movements after abductions. All signs pointed to a research facility hidden in an asteroid field at the edge of human space, as they prepared a small, unmarked ship with enough firepower. To start a small war, Tejo found himself thinking of all the times he'd told Jia about his military days. Sanitized versions, of course. She'd always looked at him with such pride. Now those skills would be put to their most important use ever. 3 days later, as their ship approached the asteroid field, Jun Seo voiced what they were all thinking. These Nox, they've never faced. Humans who are fighting for family. They think we're just weak test subjects. They have no idea what they've awakened. Tejo checked his weapons one last time. The Nox had taken his daughter, believing humans were no threat. They were about to learn how dangerous a human father could be. The unmarked ship drifted silently through the asteroid field, its engines running in stealth mode. Inside the cramped cockpit, Tejo studied the holographic display, showing a massive structure built into the largest asteroid. The Nox research station looked like a spider clinging to rock, with long extending arms that probably housed laboratories and docking bays. Looks heavily guarded, Jun Seo muttered, pointing to the heat signatures indicating patrol ships. At least 15 exterior guards, probably 3 times that inside. Mina finished checking her gear. Their technology is advanced, but their arrogance will work against them. They don't expect resistance. Tejo hadn't slept properly in days. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard Jia's scream. His little girl who loved painting stars and dreamed of becoming a xenobiologist, now a prisoner of creatures who saw humans as lab rats. The thought made his hands tremble with rage. We go in through this maintenance tunnel, he said, highlighting a narrow passage on the display. Their sensors show it's used for waste disposal. Minimal security expected. Mina checked the atmospheric. Readings. Suits the whole time. Their air might be toxic to us. They prepared in silence, each focusing on the dangerous task ahead. Tejo strapped extra power cells to his belt, remembering Jia's 10th birthday when she'd begged him to tell stories about his military days. He'd always softened the reality, made it sound like an adventure. Now he was diving back into that. Darkness for her sake. Ready? Jun Seo asked, sealing his tactical helmet. Tejo nodded. The old familiar calm was settling over him, the combat mindset he thought he'd left behind years ago. Their ship attached to the station with barely a sound, magnetic clamps locking onto the outer hull near the maintenance tunnel. One by one they moved through the airlock and entered the dimly lit passageway. The gravity was slightly stronger than Earth's, making their movements feel sluggish. Security systems ahead, whispered Mina, her scanner detecting invisible beams. Crossing the corridor, Jun Seo pulled out a device barely larger than his palm. Nox Tech we borrowed from their embassy last year should create a temporary blind spot. The device emitted a soft pulse, and the security beams flickered momentarily, before stabilizing in a new pattern that left them a narrow path. We have 4 minutes before the system resets, Jun Seo warned. They moved quickly through the gap, entering a vast chamber that appeared to be a cargo hold. Containers labeled in the angular Nox script lined the walls, and automated loaders moved silently between storage areas. Tejo consulted the rough map they'd constructed, based on Officer Han's intelligence. Research sectors should be 2 levels up. We need to... He stopped, as the heavy footsteps of a guard approached. The 3 humans ducked behind a stack of containers, just as a Nox security officer rounded the corner. This was Tejo's first close look at one of them, unobscured by camera footage. The creature stood nearly 8 feet tall, its exoskeleton gleaming with a blue-black iridescence under the lights. Its forearms moved with precise mechanical grace as it scanned the area. Through his helmet, Taeho could hear the same clicking sounds he'd heard during Jia's desperate call. The sound ignited something primal inside him. Mina placed a restraining hand on his arm, shaking her head slightly. Too risky. They needed stealth. The guard moved on and they continued toward a service elevator. Junseo overrode the security, using another stolen device, and they began ascending toward the research levels. Strange, Mina murmured, studying her scanner. Very little communication chatter, almost like they're not worried about security breaches at all. They've never been challenged by humans before, Taeho replied grimly. They think we're soft, weak. The elevator doors opened onto a corridor with transparent walls revealing laboratory spaces. Inside each lab, Nox scientists in white protective coverings moved between workstations. Taeho felt sick as he glimpsed human blood samples being processed, tissue samples under analysis. There, Junseo pointed to a directory panel on the wall, displaying Nox symbols. Holding cells should be at the end of this corridor, then left. They moved carefully, using the shadows between lighting panels for cover. The station was surprisingly busy, with Nox researchers hurrying between labs, completely oblivious to the possibility of intruders. Their confidence was absolute. Turning a corner, they came face to face with another guard. This one reacted instantly, reaching for a weapon. Taeho moved without thinking, 8 years of civilian life falling away in an instant. His stun baton connected with the junction between the Nox's head and thorax, sending it crashing to the floor with a sound like breaking pottery. "Drag it into this storage room," Mina hissed, already moving to open a nearby door. Inside, Taeho examined the unconscious alien. Its exoskeleton had cracked slightly where his baton had struck. Up close, the being smelled like copper and something else he couldn't identify. Something alien. "They bleed blue," Junseo observed, pointing to the dark liquid seeping from the crack. Taeho removed the guard's communication device and security badge. "This might get us deeper access," they continued on, moving with greater urgency now that an alarm could be raised at any moment. The holding cell section was marked by heavy doors with scanning panels beside them. Taeho swiped the stolen badge, holding his breath. The door slid open to reveal a long corridor with cells on either side. Each cell had a transparent front. Wall and inside each one was a human, some lying still on examination tables, others huddled in corners. The sight sent a wave of cold fury through Taeho's body. "Start checking for Jia," he ordered, moving quickly down the line of cells. "We need to find her and get all these people out." As they searched, a voice came from behind them, the distinctive clicking of Nox speech, followed by words in strangely accented English. "Fascinating, you actually came for them." Taeho turned to find a Nox wearing white laboratory coverings, standing at the entrance to the holding area. It was taller than the guard had been, with more delicate limbs, some kind of scientist. Humans were classified as non-aggressive except in immediate survival situations, the Nox continued, its mandibles moving in what might have been curiosity. "Yet you've traveled considerable distance, risked everything. For what? Emotional. Her attachment. Where is my daughter?" Taeho demanded, raising his weapon. The Nox seemed unbothered by the threat. "Which specimen belongs to you? They all look quite similar to our eyes." Junseo stepped forward. "We're taking all of them. Every single human you've abducted." The alien tilted its head. "Impossible. Our research is vital to understanding your species' remarkable pain tolerance. The data is too valuable." Mina had been working on the cell control panel. "Taeho, I need another minute to override the system." The Nox scientist made a sound that might have been amusement. "Guards are already on their way. Your intrusion was detected the moment you disabled the first security officer." It gestured with one of its forearms. "However, I admit I'm curious. Your capabilities exceed our projections. Perhaps we've underestimated your species." Taeho stepped closer to the alien, his voice deadly calm. "You took my daughter. You call her a specimen. When I find her, I'm taking her home. And if she's been harmed, there won't be enough of you left to study." For the first time, The Nox scientist's confidence seemed to waver. It was seeing something it hadn't expected, something beyond its careful categorization of human behavior. In Tai-Ho's eyes burned a determination that no laboratory could measure. The Nox scientist led Tai-Ho, Junseo, and Mina deeper into the research station, its forearms moving in fluid gestures that seemed almost graceful. The three humans kept their weapons ready, following at a distance, each watching for signs of a trap. Mina had managed to override the cell control systems, locking the security doors open so they could return quickly if needed. "You are much more fascinating than our preliminary studies suggested," Dr. Ulon said, mandibles clicking between words. "The specimens we collected showed impressive pain thresholds and physical resilience, but nothing indicated this level of determination." Tai-Ho's jaw tightened at the casual way the alien referred to humans as specimens. Every instinct screamed at him to find Jia and get out, but they needed information if they were going to free all the captives. The laboratory they entered was massive, with ceiling-high transparent tanks containing various fluids. Scientific equipment. Tai-Ho couldn't begin to understand, hummed and blinked along the walls. In the center of the room stood a large holographic display, showing what appeared to be a three-dimensional model of a human nervous system. "What exactly are you studying?" Junseo asked, his voice carefully neutral despite the horror visible in his eyes. Dr. Ulon adjusted something on a nearby control panel. "Pain. Or more specifically, how different species process and respond to it." The alien's voice had an almost academic enthusiasm. "Humans have shown remarkable resilience. Your neurological responses are unique." "You're torturing people for science," Tai-Ho said flatly. "A crude characterization," the scientist replied. "We prefer stress response analysis. Your species experiences pain differently than any we've encountered. You can endure it, compartmentalize it, even use it as motivation. Most fascinating." Mina had been scanning the room with her handheld device. "Tai-Ho," she whispered, "3 doors down on the left. Human biosigns, could be Jia." Tai-Ho nodded almost imperceptibly. "Where are the rest of your specimens?" he asked the scientist. "Various testing chambers. We have 42 humans currently. The most recent acquisitions are in the primary observation ward." Dr. Ulon gestured toward the corridor Mina had indicated. "And what happens when you're done with your research?" Junseo asked. The scientist made a clicking sound that might have been the equivalent of a shrug. "The damaged specimens are disposed of. The ones still in acceptable condition are returned to their original locations with memory alterations." "Damaged," Tai-Ho repeated, a cold fury settling over him. "How many have you disposed of so far?" 17, Dr. Ulon replied without hesitation. "Your species is remarkably durable, but even humans have limits." Tai-Ho exchanged glances with his teammates. 17 people murdered in the name of alien scientific curiosity. And Jia could be next. "Show me the primary observation ward," he demanded. The Nox scientist led them down the corridor to a large circular room. One wall was made entirely of a transparent material, behind which lay several humans on examination tables. Some were unconscious, others awake and clearly terrified. Medical monitoring equipment was attached to each of them. Tai-Ho scanned the captives frantically, his heart pounding. And then he saw her, Jia, strapped to a table near the far wall. She was pale, her face drawn with fear and exhaustion, but she was alive. The relief that flooded through him was immediately followed by a surge of rage. "That one," he said, pointing to Jia. "What have you done to her?" Dr. Ulon consulted a datapad. "Specimen 37, early stages of neural mapping. We've applied various stimuli to measure pain response, but haven't begun invasive procedures yet." Tai-Ho stepped closer to the transparent wall, placing his hand against it. Jia couldn't see him. It appeared to be one way, but he could see the tears that had dried on her cheeks. His little girl who had never hurt anyone in her life. "You're going to release her and all the others," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Now." "Impossible," Dr. Ulon replied. "The research is too valuable. Your species' unique neurological structure could revolutionize our understanding of pain management and endurance training for our soldiers." Mina had been moving slowly around the room, seemingly examining the equipment, but actually planting small devices at strategic points. She caught Teiho's eye and gave a subtle nod. Junseo stepped forward. "If humans are so interesting to you, maybe you should study why we're standing here right now, 3 against an entire research station. What makes someone willingly put themselves in danger like this?" The scientist tilted its head. "An interesting question. Our behavioral model suggested a 0.03% probability of rescue attempts. Yet here you are." "Here's another thing your models missed," Teiho said. "Humans have something your species apparently doesn't understand. We call it love, particularly what a parent feels for their child." "We understand familial bonding," Dr. Oolon countered. "Many species exhibit protective behaviors toward offspring." "Not like this," Teiho said quietly. "Let me show you something your scans and tests can't measure." He activated his wrist computer, bringing up an audio file. The clicking sounds that had been in the background during Gia's distress call filled the room. Dr. Oolon's head jerked up in surprise. "That's a Nox emergency frequency," the scientist said. "How did you... When you took my daughter, you transmitted on that frequency," Teiho explained. "I recorded it, analyzed it, and discovered something interesting about your species." Understanding dawned in the alien's posture. "The resonance frequency of our exoskeletons, impossible. Our communications are encrypted." Mina smiled coldly. "Not encrypted enough against a father trying to find his child." Teiho stepped closer to the scientist. "Your exoskeletons vibrate at a specific frequency. At low levels, it's how you communicate, but at higher amplitudes." He played another sound, this one a modified version of the Nox communication signal, but louder, more intense. Dr. Oolon flinched, its exoskeleton visibly vibrating. "Stop," the scientist said, mandibles clicking rapidly. "That's painful." "Now you understand what happens when you take something precious from a human," Teiho said, lowering the volume but not stopping the sound entirely. "We become something else, something your studies and models can't predict." Junseo moved to the control panel. "We've rigged this station's communication system to broadcast this frequency throughout the entire facility. Either you help us get everyone out or we turn it on full power." Dr. Oolon's limbs twitched uncomfortably. "That would kill every Nox on the station." "I know," Teiho said simply. "And a week ago I was just a transport pilot, a civilian. But you took my daughter, and now I'm willing to destroy your entire research team." The alien scientist stood, still for a long moment, its alien face unreadable to human eyes. But when it spoke, there was a new note in its voice, something that might have been respect or fear. "Perhaps," Dr. Oolon said slowly, "there is another aspect of human neurology we have failed to properly study. The transformation that occurs when offspring are threatened." It moved to the control panel and began entering commands. "I will help you evacuate the humans." As the restraints on the examination tables began to release, Teiho watched Gia's face through the transparent wall. Her eyes fluttered open, confusion giving way to relief as she realized she was being freed. "Your research has a fatal flaw," Teiho told the scientist as they prepared to move the weakened captives. "You classified humans as non-threatening, based on our physical capabilities alone. You never considered what we become when someone we love is in danger." Dr. Oolon's response was quiet, almost contemplative. "A significant oversight, one that will require a complete reassessment of your species." As they began helping the freed captives toward the hangar bay, Teiho finally reached Gia. She collapsed into his arms, sobbing, and he held her tight, the fury that had driven him across space giving way to overwhelming relief. "Dad," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "You came for me. How did you find me?" Teiho smoothed her hair gently. "They didn't understand what they were dealing with when they took you. They thought humans were just subjects for their experiments. They never counted on a father's love." Mina approached them, her expression urgent. "We need to move quickly. The other Nox will realize what's happening soon." As they hurried toward the escape ships, Teiho kept his arm around Gia, supporting her weakened body. Behind them, Dr. Oolon watched with those alien eyes that seemed to be reassessing everything they thought they knew about humans. The Nox had made a critical error in their research. They had studied human pain, human resilience, human biology, but they had missed the most dangerous human quality of all, the lengths to which we'll go for those we love. Dr. Oolon watched with growing concern as Tai-Ho attached the small sonic transmitter to the research station's main communication array. The human worked with surprising efficiency, rewiring connections and reprogramming the system with a determination that seemed almost mechanical. Behind them, Junseo and Mina were helping the weakened human captives prepare for evacuation, gathering what supplies they could find and treating the worst injuries. "You understand that this will affect every Nox on the station?" Dr. Oolon asked, mandibles clicking nervously. Many are simply researchers who had no direct involvement with the experiments. Tai-Ho didn't look up from his work. "They stood by while people were tortured. They're not innocent." "We don't see it as torture," the scientist insisted. "Our species experiences pain differently. For us, it's merely a signal, without the emotional component you humans attach to it." "Is that how you justify it?" Tai-Ho finally turned to face the alien. "By telling yourselves we feel things differently than you do?" In the makeshift medical area they'd set up in the hangar, Gia sat, wrapped, in a thermal blanket, watching her father with a mixture of pride and fear. She'd always known him as gentle, patient, the dad who taught her to paint stars, who stayed up all night helping with science projects, who cried at sad movies. This version of him, hard-eyed and dangerous, was someone she'd never seen before. "The CU frequency won't kill them immediately," Tai-Ho continued, turning back to his work. "They'll have time to evacuate to their own escape pods, but it will incapacitate them long enough for us to get everyone out." Dr. Oolon's upper limbs made a gesture that might have been surrender. "Your species continues to surprise me. Our research classified humans as physically unremarkable, with minimal threat potential. Yet here you are about to defeat an entire research station." "That's because you measured the wrong things," Junseo said, joining them after stabilizing an elderly man who had been in the cells for weeks. "You measured strength, endurance, pain threshold. You should have measured what we do when pushed to our limits." Mina approached with a datapad she'd taken from one of the labs. "I've downloaded all their research files. Their records show they've been abducting humans for over a year. Colonies, outposts, even Earth itself." Tai-Ho's hands stilled for a moment. "How many?" "Hundreds," Mina replied quietly. "Most were returned with their memories wiped, but the ones who didn't survive." She didn't finish the sentence. The hangar had become a flurry of activity as the rescued captives, those strong enough to help, prepared 3 transport vessels for departure. There were 42 survivors in total, ranging from teenagers to the elderly. Some bore visible marks of the experiments, strange surgical scars, burn patterns, injection sites that glowed faintly under the lights. Tai-Ho made the final connection on the transmitter and stepped back. "It's ready." A sudden alarm blared throughout. The station and red lights began flashing in the corridors. "They've discovered the empty cells," Dr. Oolon said. "Security protocols are activating." On the hangar's main view screen, they could see armed Nox guards moving quickly through the corridors, heading in their direction. Tai-Ho looked across the room at Gia, who gave him a small nod. She understood what needed to be done. Everyone. "Get to the ships now," Junseo shouted, helping the weakest captives up the ramps. "We're out of time." Tai-Ho's finger hovered over the activation control for the sonic transmitter. "Last chance, Doctor. Help us finish the evacuation and I'll give your people time to escape too." The scientist's large compound eyes studied Tai-Ho for a long moment. "You would still show mercy after what we did to your kind." "That's another thing your research missed," Tai-Ho said quietly. "Humans can choose to be better than their instincts, even when we have every reason for revenge." A squad of armed guards appeared at the hangar entrance, their weapons raised. One fired, the energy bolt scorching the wall inches from Mina's. Head Tai-Ho pressed the button. The effect was immediate and devastating. The sonic frequency blasted through every speaker and communication device on the station. The armed guards dropped their weapons, clutching at their heads as their exoskeletons began to vibrate visibly. Throughout the station, the security cameras showed Nox scientists and staff collapsing, their rigid outer shells cracking under the assault. Dr. Oolon had fallen to his knees, body trembling violently, but the scientist managed to remain conscious through what must have been excruciating pain. How is this possible? We are technologically superior in every way. Tae-ho helped the alien to a nearby bench. Technology isn't everything. You overlooked something fundamental about humans. We adapt. We overcome, especially when protecting our own. The captives were boarding the last ship now. Mina had already started the engines on the first two vessels. Jia stood at the ramp of the third, waiting for her father. You should go, Tae-ho told the scientist. Get to your people. The emergency pods are that way. He pointed down a side corridor. You have about 10 minutes before the frequency reaches maximum amplitude. Dr. Oolon struggled to stand. Why tell me this? Why not let me die with the others? Because someone needs to tell your leaders what happened here. Someone needs to explain why humans shouldn't be underestimated again. Tae-ho stepped closer, his voice dropping. And because my daughter is watching, and I want her to see that even after everything that happened, I didn't become a monster. The station was beginning to shake now, systems failing as the sonic frequency disrupted everything from computer networks to structural integrity fields. Small explosions echoed from deeper inside the facility. Tae-ho turned to leave but paused. When the scientist called out to him, "Human, what is your designation?" "My name is Tae-ho Kim," he answered. "I'm a transport pilot, a father. Remember that when you tell your superiors who defeated your research station." "I will remember," Dr. Oolon said, mandibles clicking in what might have been respect. "And I will tell them that they should fear not your weapons or your technology, but what you become when your offspring are threatened." As Tae-ho ran toward the waiting ship, the station's automated warnings blared overhead. Systems were failing, and the structure was becoming unstable. He leaped onto the ramp just as it began to close, finding Jia waiting for him inside. She threw her arms around him, holding tight as the ship lifted off. Through the viewport, they watched as the research station began to break apart. Emergency. Pods shooting away from the main structure, like seeds from a bursting pod. "Did you see him get away?" Jia asked quietly, her eyes following the escaping pods. Tae-ho nodded, surprised by her concern for the alien who had overseen her captivity. "I think so. Someone has to tell their people what happened here." Jun Seo guided their ship away from the disintegrating station, joining the other two vessels, carrying the freed captives. On the communication channel, they could hear cheers and weeping from the rescued humans as they realized they were truly free. "What happens now?" Jia asked, her hand gripping her father's tightly. "Will they come after us? After Earth?" Tae-ho looked out at the stars, thinking about the message they'd just sent to an advanced alien civilization that had grievously underestimated humanity. "I don't think so," he said finally. "I think they just learned that some lines should never be crossed, and that of all the dangerous species in the galaxy, the one you should fear most is a human fighting for someone they love." As their small fleet set course for home, Tae-ho knew the galaxy had changed today. The Nox had made a critical error in their assessment of humanity. They had studied human bodies, human biology, human pain, but they had failed to understand the human heart, and that was a mistake they would not make again. The three ships carrying the freed humans emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Earth colony system, their engines glowing blue against the darkness. On the bridge of the lead vessel, Tae-ho sat in the pilot's chair, his eyes fixed on the distant shimmer of the colony's orbital stations. Beside him, Jia had fallen asleep, her head resting against his shoulder. The dark circles under her eyes were still visible, but some color had returned to her cheeks during the journey home. "Colony Defense is hailing us," Jun Seo said from the communication station. "They're demanding identification and flight plans. Apparently, we've caused quite a stir." Mina looked up from where she was organizing the research data they'd stolen from the Nox facility. "What do we tell them? The truth sounds insane." Tae-ho gently shifted Jia to a more comfortable position, careful not to wake her. The past 3 days of travel had been the first real rest she'd had since her abduction. The other rescued captives were similarly exhausted, many still recovering from the experiments they'd endured. "We tell them everything," Tae-ho decided, "and we show them proof. He activated the ship's communication system. Colony Defense, this is Commander Tae-ho Kim. I'm transmitting security clearance codes now. We are returning with 42 human captives rescued from an alien research facility. Request immediate medical teams at landing bays and direct connection to Earth Central Command. There was a long pause before the response came. Commander Kim, your codes are outdated but valid. We've been searching for you since your unauthorized departure. What is this about alien captives? Not alien captives, Tae-ho corrected. Human captives taken by aliens. The Nox have been abducting people for experiments. We have proof and we have survivors who need medical attention. Another voice cut into the channel, older, authoritative. This is Governor Hyun. Commander Kim, are you saying you have evidence of Nox violations of our treaty? More than evidence, Governor. We have witnesses, research data, and recorded confessions from their lead scientist. The silence that followed was telling. The diplomatic relations between humans and the Nox Dominion had always been delicate. The aliens' advanced technology made them valuable trading partners, but their aloof nature had bred mistrust. Proceed to Central Landing Bay, the governor finally ordered. Medical teams will meet you there, and Commander, well done. As the ships began their descent toward the colony, Gia stirred and opened her eyes. Are we home? Tae-ho nodded, pointing to the growing sphere of the colony world below them. We're home, all of us. She sat up straighter, looking out at the familiar blue-green planet. Do you think they'll believe us? About what the Nox were doing? They'll have to, Jun Seo said, joining them at the viewport. We've got 42 witnesses and enough scientific data to bury any doubts. The landing bay was crowded when they arrived, medical teams standing by with stretchers and equipment, security forces forming a perimeter, and behind them a crowd of colony officials and civilians straining to see. News of their arrival had spread quickly. As the ship's ramp lowered, Tae-ho helped Gia to her feet. Ready? She straightened her shoulders, suddenly looking older than her 17 years. The others need to see that we're not afraid anymore. Together, they led the procession of rescued captives down the ramp. Many needed help walking, leaning on Mina, Junseo, or the stronger survivors. The waiting medical teams rushed forward, but stopped short in shock as they saw the visible evidence of experimentation on the survivors' bodies. Governor Hyun pushed through the crowd, his face pale as he took in the scene. Commander Kim, I need to understand exactly what happened. Tae-ho nodded toward a nearby conference room. You'll want to see this privately first. Inside, Mina set up the data displays showing the Nox research files, images of human test subjects, detailed, notes on pain response experiments, and video recordings of procedures that made even the hardened colonial officials turn away in disgust. They've been doing this for over a year, Tae-ho explained. Taking people from remote outposts at first, then growing bolder. They classified humans as low-threat species with useful neurological traits. Their experiments were designed to measure our pain thresholds and healing capabilities. Governor Hyun sank into a chair, his face ashen. And you destroyed their facility? We gave them time to evacuate, Junseo clarified. But yes, the research station is gone. Their lead scientist escaped, Tae-ho added. Deliberately. He'll report what happened to the Nox leadership. You wanted him to escape, the governor realized. To send a message. Tae-ho nodded. They needed to understand that we aren't what they thought we were, that humans can't be categorized by physical measurements and pain thresholds alone. Outside the conference room, through the glass walls, they could see the medical teams treating the survivors. Family members who had been notified were beginning to arrive, the emotional reunions visible even from a distance. Gia was speaking, with a group of colonial officials, her posture straight despite her exhaustion. We've already transmitted all this data to Earth Central Command, Mina said, gesturing to the displays. They're calling an emergency session of the Interstellar Council. The Nox representatives will be forced to answer for this. Governor Hyun stood up, his initial shock giving way to determination. The diplomatic implications are massive. The Nox Dominion has advanced technology we rely on. With respect, Governor, Tae-ho interrupted, that's exactly what they were counting on, that we'd value their technology over our people. The older man looked at him for a long moment, then nodded slowly. "You're right, of course. This changes everything." He turned to his staff. "I want full protection for all survivors and their families, and prepare a planetary broadcast. Our people need to know what's happened." As the officials hurried to carry out these orders, Tejo slipped away from the conference room and made his way to where Gia was now sitting alone, watching the reunions happening around her. "How are you holding up?" he asked, sitting beside her. She leaned against him. "It's strange. When I was in that cell, I kept thinking about our home, about my room, my paintings, normal things. And now we're back, but everything feels different." "It is different," Tejo acknowledged. "The galaxy just got a lot more complicated." A commotion at the entrance to the landing bay drew their attention. A group of Nox diplomats had arrived, their tall insectoid forms unmistakable, even at a distance. The colony security forces blocked their path as Governor Hyun went to meet them. "They're already here," Junseo said, joining Taiho and Gia. That was fast. Through the crowd, they could see the senior Nox diplomat gesturing emphatically, mandibles clicking rapidly as it spoke to the governor. The human official stood firm, gesturing toward the medical bay, where the evidence of Nox atrocities was being documented. Mina approached with a data pad. "Earth Command just sent this. The Nox central government is claiming the research station was a rogue operation, unauthorized by their leadership." "Convenient," Junseo remarked dryly. On the main view screen above the landing bay, a broadcast had begun. Images from the research facility were being shown alongside testimony from the survivors. The Nox diplomats fell silent as they watched, their alien body language unreadable to human eyes. "They're afraid," Gia said quietly. Tejo looked at his daughter in surprise. "What makes you say that?" "The way they're standing. It's how Dr. Ulon looked when you showed him what humans would do to protect their families." She met her father's gaze. "They're afraid of us now," as if confirming her words. The Nox delegation began a hasty retreat from the landing bay, colonial security forces following at a distance. "The message was received," Junseo said with grim satisfaction. Later that evening, in the quiet of the medical recovery room where Gia was being kept for observation, Taiho watched his daughter sleeping peacefully for the first time since her rescue. The doctors had assured him that she would recover fully from her ordeal, though the psychological healing might take longer. His communicator chimed softly with a message from Earth Command. "Nox Dominion has recalled all research vessels from human space. Treaty renegotiations beginning tomorrow. Your presence requested as key witness." The galaxy had changed. A species that had seen humans as merely interesting test subjects had discovered something their advanced technology and clinical analysis had missed, that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in their bodies but in their bonds, in their love for each other, in their willingness to cross the stars and face impossible odds for family. Tejo gently pulled the blanket higher over Gia's shoulders. Outside the window, the lights of the colony glittered like stars against the night. Somewhere out there, beyond those stars, Dr. Ulon was telling his people about the transport pilot who had brought down an entire research station to save his daughter, about how humans, when pushed to their limits, become something else entirely, about how they had gravely underestimated humanity, and in councils and command centers across human space, leaders were receiving the data from the Nox facility, understanding for the first time that the polite, technologically superior aliens they had been trading with had been viewing them as little more than interesting laboratory specimens. The message had been delivered. Humanity would no longer be underestimated.